Welcome to the Three Ships Podcast with your host, Randy Russell, founder and president of RLR Leadership Consulting. RLR Leadership Consulting serves both the public and private sector.
Hooked on a feeling today, and welcome to the Three Ships Podcast. We've got my great friend, Aaron Sadoff here. Aaron, welcome to the Three Ships Podcast.
Thank you, my friend Randy. Hey, we're a couple states apart, but it feels like we're right in the living room together.
Absolutely. No, this is fantastic. This is great. Our listeners are in for a real special treat hearing about you, Aaron, and I want to give a little bit of a background for those of you that are joining us on the podcast today. If you're here with us for the first time, welcome. And for those of you that continue to join us each time, welcome back. We're really excited to have Aaron Sadoff here. Aaron is from Wisconsin. He is a United States Army and Gulf War veteran. He's a graduate of Wisconsin-Madison and has dedicated 24 years to the field of education as a psychology history teacher, a middle school principal, and he has served the past 12 years as a superintendent of the school district of North Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. He has been honored as the 2019 Wisconsin Superintendent of the Year. He's got an awesome family, 3 children, Paige, Lily, and Ethan, and his lovely wife of 24 years, Kelly. And Aaron says she's a saint, and she's got to be. 2 of his biggest out-of-school non-family accomplishments is holding the Fond du Lac Buffalo Wild Wings Blazing Challenge and eating 12 of the hottest wings in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And the other thing is you served as a caddy for President George H.W. Bush. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. There it is, right on my wall. Me and the press.
That is awesome. Well, we're going to find out about that and a lot more during this episode. I want to give a special thank you to CEE, the Center for Educational Effectiveness. They're our sponsor today, and CEE provides comprehensive data and consulting services to meet the challenges and mandates for increased student learning. So thank you, CEE. So Aaron, how are you doing in these crazy times?
What I'm sure of one thing is that this is the first time, I think, in the history of mankind that we're all in something together, be it in Washington, Wisconsin, America, Russia, Italy, Brazil. We are going through a pandemic and dealing with the same thing at the same time, which, although it's not a good thing, there is solace knowing that together we're working and we're going through this really difficult time. And I think what I'm also really thoughtful and thankful for when we look at where we're at is the amount of people that are stepping up. I've got a saying now that difficult times don't build character. I think under 18 they do. I think once you're over 18, 19, I think difficult times reveal character. And I'm seeing a lot of positive things going on, and I'm seeing some people struggle. But I feel blessed to be in this position, just like you, to help lead the community and support everybody.
That's great, Aaron. And just have always appreciated your positive attitude, your spirit of building others. As you mentioned, we have a lot to be thankful, even during these difficult times. I know as the superintendent in Wisconsin and as the Wisconsin Superintendent of the Year, you do have a lot to be thankful. There are a lot of challenges. And how are you personally leading your district and leading yourself through these challenging times?
I think the number one thing is embracing the moment. I think one thing, I was talking with Sean Aker right when the pandemic started, and I was doing some research and looking at, I don't know if you ever heard about the silver medal kind of theory, where you have silver medalists on a scale of 1 to 10 on happiness, kind of were like at a 3, but bronze medalists were at like a 7. So, what it is it's this idea of comparison. And to hone in on your question, what I've really tried to do is, when I was talking with Sean Aker and hearing that, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think right now, that's what I talk about is right now. Let's not what it was like, before COVID or what it's going to be like later on. Good things to think about. We got a plan, but there's so many positive things that we can focus on right now. If you think about yourself, what are you doing different now than you ever did before? I could tell you, my kids are home more now, my 22, my 19, and my 15-year-old. I've talked to them more in the past 8 months than ever before. We spend time hanging out and talking more than we ever did, and that wouldn't have happened without the pandemic. And then when I see my staff, I'm up there front line doing whatever I can to support, being that role model, wear that mask, be 6 feet, or we say 10 Orioles because each Oriole's like 7 inches and that's our mascot. So we say 10 Orioles apart, and being smart about who you're around, but also being pragmatic. There's people who are very nervous and there's people who don't think this is anything. Finding that middle part and just being understanding and responsive to that concern, because I'm sure you have, and many of you guys out there have gotten emails and concerns from staff and community that says, how can you put us at such a unsafe way? We're going to get sick, or our parents are going to get sick and we could die. And then you have the other side, like, we got to get these kids back all the time. Come on, it's just a cold. So I think by balancing that, and for me to kind of come at the beginning when we were talking about we're all in this together, I think not comparing, number one, and then leading by showing I'm not comparing and really trying to embrace the moment that we have. And that's really what I'm kind of doing, is trying to live in the now and realize that, good things happen to good people, bad things happen to everybody. And our strength comes from our relationships, and by really focusing on what we can do is what really has helped me.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Aaron. As you mentioned balance, how do you find that balance for yourself, both professionally and personally, in dealing with difficulty, adversity on one end, and then this thankfulness and appreciation on the other end?
All right, so really two things I think here. Number one, my friend Jim Siebert, superintendent down in Waukesha, Wisconsin, he said when I became a superintendent and took over in this district, when he left, he says, Aaron, when you go from being a principal, or when you go from being a teacher to a principal, you change careers. It's a whole different world. When you go from being a principal or an administrator to a superintendent, you got a lifestyle. So I think the number one thing that I've realized is I try to leverage my job and my personal life together. For instance, I have 3 kids. They're involved in athletics and music and all that. So I would go as a parent, but yet I was also kind of there as the superintendent too. When I go grocery shopping, when I go out to eat and I see kids or something, I'm out there as a community member, but I'm also very aware that I'm the superintendent. So for me, this work-life balance, when I just accepted that, hey, I've got a lifestyle, it is what it is. I've always got time. Now that time might be from 12 at midnight till 1 in the morning, but I do have time sometimes. It's just figuring that out, right? And then the second thing, I don't know if you watch Ted Lasso. It's a great show on Apple TV. I heard about this one from my friend Ted Knightsky. And so he's a football coach. Wichita State goes to England, has no idea what soccer is all about. The woman who hired him she took over the team, hates the team, wants to drive it into the ground. So what she does is brings over this football coach, like American football, to ruin the team. Well, Ted Lasso is one of the most positive people. If you haven't seen it, guys, check out Ted Lasso on Apple Plus, and thanks, Ted, for the lookout for that. But he says this, and I'll ask you, Randy, if you know. Do you know what the happiest animal in the world is?
The happiest animal in the world has got to be a kangaroo.
Well, you're close. It's the goldfish. So you're pretty close. It's the goldfish. And the reason the goldfish is the happiest animal in the world, it has a 10-second memory. And I think that's another thing, that when you look at these difficult conversations or that email that's this long, and then you get the next one that's this long, and then you have people calling in the board, and you have people angry about things, and you have people excited. I think it's on both realms. You're only as important as what you're doing now, and having a short memory really, it helps. I mean, it's hard, don't get me wrong. I do hold on to things, and stew on them. But for the most part, I really, move on, forgive and forget. I don't forget anything ever. I don't have to remember it all the time. And having that short memory, it's like a golfer. If you have a bad stroke, so what? Let's move on and do the next one. I can't do anything about that. I can learn, but move forward. So I would say embracing the lifestyle of being a superintendent is important, because it definitely, I believe if you want to do it right, it's a lifestyle. And that's something your family's got to be all on board and everything, and you work through that. And then the second thing is, let's goldfish it, baby. Huh? Let's do that. 10 seconds and we're moving on.
Yeah, that's great, Aaron. That's great. So you mentioned golf. I mentioned in the introduction a little bit that you were a caddy for President Bush. And so are you an avid golfer?
Well, let me tell you, Randy, I'm more of a golfer, like without doubt. I was a huge Caddyshack fan, and Carl Spackler's right there, man, with the people that I wanted to be. So when I was in teaching, I'm a terrible golfer, actually, absolutely horrendous. But that's because I don't golf. But I love the sport. I've been a bartender. I've cut greens, And then I caddied at Whistling Straits once it opened I lived in Sheboygan and then went to Manitowoc. For those of you that don't know, it's about a half an hour drive right along Lake Michigan. And that's where Whistling Straits is at. And I was there for, when I was caddying, I got the call on a Sunday that, hey, Aaron, you're going to caddy for President Bush at the grand opening tomorrow. And I'm like, but I think it's because I was in the military before, so my name was easy to pass. But I'll tell you what a wonderful man. And he ended up sending me a $50 check. I did cash it because I didn't run a wreck his bank account. I didn't want to do that. Yeah. And then a nice card and a picture. And he's just a very, very kind man. And it was great to spend 5.5 hours with him. And, I had a lot of memories. I think in superintendency also, like being a caddy, it's all about service. It's all about knowing who your golfer is or who your board member is or who your teacher is. And you have to give different advice. You can't just say, use that same club all the time. You have to know where to aim. And then you have to also be a cheerleader and say, come on, get over it. Or, hey, you did a great job. Let's replicate that. So yeah, that was probably one of my most favorite careers of all time. I wouldn't mind doing that. I also think hailing cabs at the Mirage in Vegas would be fun. I really think that I could be really good at, that service thing. So no, golf is going to be a game that I'm going to pick up later on. But you know what? Every time I go out, I'll have a good shot. Now, I don't know why, but it feels good. So as I get on, the kids get older, see what happens, get out on those links and kind of swing hard in case I hit it.
Good for you. Good for you. And you mentioned service, Aaron, because you've got a service heart. How did you get started into education? And you've got this calling card as a teacher, as a coach, as a principal, and as a superintendent. Maybe you could talk about what are the impacts that led you into this career of service?
Yeah, so I'm going to throw a little curveball at you. I think I was reading Johnny Bunko, Daniel Pink. I'm a big Daniel Pink guy. I don't know if you've ever heard his book in Research Drive on Motivation. Well, he wrote this book that I end up giving to a lot of college graduates and friends and family. It's called Johnny Bunko and the 6 Rules of Life. And I became a teacher. I loved history. God, I loved history. And that's what I said I was going to do, is be a teacher. And I'll come back to the Johnny Bunko, but I got out of the military and I'm like, I told everybody I was going to be a teacher. So guess what? I became a teacher. It's not like I had this huge thing, but it's like, okay, hey, I'll do something. Going to school's not work. I can teach. And then I got my administrative degree right away. And my goal, honestly, is to be an assistant principal at a high school. I still think that would be a lot of fun. I never got that chance, but once I got that taste of leadership and being able to support other people, I'm like, I really like this. Then when my friend left for the superintendency in a different district, I was 3 years I worked with him, and I learned about politics. I learned about board relations. I learned about, the ability for you to have impact. Like over COVID, if I wasn't the superintendent here, I'd be going nuts, because I have that ability that what I think and do matters. I've been blessed to be given the authority by this community to help lead them through that. So that's really how it was, just an evolution. It's never been like, oh, I have this passion. I think, and that's something that you can be really good at things. And for me, it's service. Teaching is part of it, but it's that serving and helping support. And one of the things in the Johnny Bunko and the Daniel Pink's graphic novel is there is no plan. I used to get myself painted into a corner. If you think about how if you're painting the ground and you paint yourself and then you're in this back corner, you can't get out because the floor is wet. I used to do that all the time. Say, this is what's going to happen. This is what I'm going to do. And I've really learned that I got to just stop that. I need to have goals and things. But if you set and say you're going to do things and you don't really want to do them, you really put yourself back. So I've really learned that, my plan as I move forward now is to continue to help, do my job well, keep my eyes open, look for options, but also realize that, what, maybe, and I'll throw this out to you, Randy, have you ever heard that saying, things happen for a reason?
Mm-hmm.
So I was at a funeral last year and I'm like, I don't jive with that. I'm trying to think about what this reason is, that some deity or some entity said, you're going to have to deal with this. So I came up with a new saying. Things may not happen for a reason, but we get to give reasons to why things happen. Now, if you give a negative reasons to why things happen, then you're going to have to deal with the damage and whatever falls out. If you give a positive reason, maybe it is some sort of divine intervention. Maybe it is to make you stronger. Maybe it is to make you be more aware. If you give reasons to why things happen that are positive, then those things are positive. So I think my journey has been really navigating, really using, and I learned this also from Sean Akers' book. I kind of took a different take on his idea of mental aikido. and his a big potential. But I really think it's that 8 inches between your ears and how you develop relationships and experiences. And we can't choose what happens all the time, but we sure the heck can choose how we react. And that's what's really helped drive me and what I really feel blessed about being in education, because I've been able to focus on that and then support others.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, every time we've ever gotten together, whether it's in person or on the phone or, like on a Zoom call, and being a part of your presentation that you did about a month ago was really something that I needed with the orange frog, and just a positive, uplifting story was fantastic. So the service piece is huge to you, and thank you for your service in the military, in the Army, in Gulf War. What are some of the leadership lessons that you learned in the military that you've also used as a teacher, a principal, and as a superintendent?
I think one of the main, well, probably two main things in the military is, I was 18, white kid, didn't understand diversity or anything from Wisconsin. One of the main things I learned is that I'm not like everyone else, nor is anybody else like everyone else. That was a huge eye opener, and realized that what I thought and what I wanted to do didn't always jive with what other people did. And I had to learn how to compromise. I had to learn how to, get over myself a little bit. I was really good at what I did. And if you didn't believe it, you could have just asked me, because I would have told you. So I learned a ton about humility. And I think that has helped me out, tenfold as we move forward. And the other thing that I've always, that the military always helped me out too, is there's this emotion, a happy emotion called anticipation. It's like, so like at Thanksgiving, look so forward to seeing my family and doing different things. What I learned in the military is, even though I had like 17 weeks of basic training in AIT, I made a plan. I had hope. Now, understand, hope is a good idea, but a crummy plan. You want to have hope. You have to go out there, but then how do you get there? And one thing I learned in the military is to have anticipation, to have that hope, but then make a plan. Like, I got 5 days left, and today I'm dealing with the day. I'm not dealing with the other 4 days later. And I think that, and you've done that. I know some of the really difficult times that you've been through, just recently with your district, you just focus on what can I do now, right now, and then, go from there. So those are two things about learning how different things are, and perspective taking, being humble. And the other part, I think, as I reflect, is that to really have a plan, but deal with now, because hope and frivolous optimism get you killed. But you need to be optimistic, but it has to be rationalized optimism. And if you then set up some goals and you work towards those, you can get through anything.
That's fantastic. And, you talked about optimism, you talked about hope, but also this reality of that you've got to have a plan. How do you personally stay hopeful and optimistic, even during these challenging times?
I think I'm going to throw a little contradiction at myself. As I said, like really trying to focus on what we can do now. One thing that really what really helps me out too, is know that everything is fluid. What's going to happen is different than what we expect. Could be worse, it could be better, but it's really fluid. And I think, I like to work in the now, but I think looking forward and pulling from the past a little bit of like history and expectations. But I really think, keeping your head staring forward, it's like with Columbus, just don't turn the ship around. Just keep going, and keep looking, because you could see something. At the dark, it's always darkest before the dawn, right? It is always. So I think for me, it's really just like keep looking for it. When it's really difficult, keep looking for it, because it's always there. It's just a lot of people don't take the time to see it. Then when you see it, then you can really utilize, if it's a person, if it's an emotion, if it's a situation, or if it's an aha. And it like takes, there's some times in my life, and I'll throw it at you too, if you ever felt this way, like all of a sudden you feel a sense of relief, because you're not alone.
Yes.
And that's just huge. And that's kind of what I do to, like, in these difficult times, just keep looking for the good, because it's there.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more, Aaron. And as you think about, what we've been through, let's say for the last 10 months, what's the single most important lesson that you think you've learned about yourself since last spring?
All right. So ironically, right in February, and by the way, guys, I met Randy and other friends from Washington, Montana, and Wyoming, because here was this guy from Wisconsin just roaming around at a governing board in DC. and I looked lost. And they said, brother, come here. We'll take you in. We'll take you in, and you're going to be okay. And since then, just really developed some great friendships over the past, 5-10 years. So I think of that because I think that's the last time we saw each other was in San Diego at the National Convention. So I was going to do a presentation, and I came upon the story of two arrows by Buddha. And the story quickly goes like this. So you're walking out in the woods, and all of a sudden you get shot with an arrow in your leg. That hurts, right?
Right.
Then you pick up an arrow off the ground and stick it in your other leg. That hurts more, doesn't it?
Yes.
So what Buddha says is, hey, that first arrow, that's life. It sucks. Bad things are going to happen. It is what it is. We can't do a thing about that first arrow. That second arrow, you don't have to stick yourself with it. Okay, that's suffering. That first arrow is pain. Pain is inevitable. And that's what when I talk to people about happiness, it isn't a Pollyannish thing about just being like, no, the life is painful. It's not good. Heck, mortality is going to kill us all. We know that's going to happen. So we have that to look forward to, right? But so that's there. But the key thing to what Buddha says is that suffering, that's a choice. You don't have to get defensive. You don't have to get angry. You don't have to get mad. You don't have to isolate. You don't have to self-deprecate. You don't have to do those things. So what's really helped me, finding that, and once again, things don't happen for a reason. I get this stuff thrown at me all the time that, oh, Aaron, maybe you're wrong. Maybe there is a bigger plan here, but we'll keep journeying. But that's what I think, Randy, has really helped me go through this is I can't do a thing about COVID right now out there. I can't do a thing about what everybody's talking about. I can't really impact a lot of that. But what I can do is impact how I react to it and what I do. And that has been on my mind, my mental muscle all the time is, hey, brother, you know what? Pain's here. Suffering's a choice. Help these people not have to suffer by you bringing up an alternative reality that makes sense and can help us get better. So that story and that second part of accepting what it is and then realizing I have choice of how I'm going to deal with it has been paramount.
Excellent, Aaron. This has been great. Well, it's so awesome for our listeners to learn more about Aaron Sadoff. And we're going to take a short break. And when we return, we're going to have Aaron come back and share with us his final thought.
You're listening to the Three Ships Podcast with your host, Randy Russell. More to come after this. The Three Ships Podcast with your host, Randy Russell.
Well, we're so glad you could join us today. The Three Ships Podcast is brought to you by RLR Leadership Consulting, serving both the public and private sector. If we can be of help to you, please contact us at www.randyrussell.org. You can follow me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and Facebook. I'm here with Aaron Sadoff, the superintendent of the North Fond du Lac, Wisconsin School District. And Aaron, can't wait to hear what's your final thought for our listeners.
All right, guys, and also just FYI, this is the first video Zoom recording that's going to get out there and hopefully Randy's new YouTube channel. So you can see I'm dancing a little bit. He's going to have to get and understand a little bit more, maybe watch some Joe Rogan, because it's not just your beautiful velvety voice now, man. It's that whole thing you got going.
Thank you, Aaron.
So one of my favorite quotes of all time is from the Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher. Remember her back in the Cold War? She was a prime minister of Britain, Great Britain during right around when Reagan was. And she said that being in power is like being a lady. If you have to tell someone you are, you're not. And what I've learned is that, like with leadership, I really don't believe I choose to be that I choose to do things to help lead people. But I'm a true leader when people allow me to make decisions. And I think, so how do I develop that authority? What do I do to allow people to say, hey, we're going to let this cat lead us and make decisions? So from the Gallup's book, their second book, what is it? Leadership Values or strength-based leadership. 4 things I've learned about how to get authority is number 1, trust. Do you have trust in people? And that's one thing that's at the foundation of everything, right? And then another one is hope. Can you install hope in other people, right? That's a big one. And then stability. Can I make, even in these most difficult times, things being stable? And then the 4th one is this thing called compassion. And compassion is huge, Randy, through this whole time. Here's a book too, if you ever want to read it. We're big strengths-based, but it's strength-based leadership. And it talks about how you garner authority and the difference between authority and power. And, that compassion's big. A lot of people don't like my decisions right now, but they understand it and they know I'm trying to do my best. So hope, stability, trust, and compassion. And if you can do those things for people, if you provide those needs, they will let you lead them. They will give you the authority and they will let you lead. And that's what I think every day as Aaron Sadoff goes to school with my family: hope, stability, trust, and compassion. Because that first arrow's coming. How you're going to deal with it is going to be huge. So that's what I would say, guys, instead of focusing on sometimes all these different leadership ideas, because there's every leadership book out there is right, including this one might be more right than most. But all those, there's a lot of great things out there. But I say when it all comes down to, for me, the core of what I do is, how do I help people feel hope? How do I help them feel stability? How do I develop trust? And then how in difficult times do they know I care about them? And if I can do those 4 things and do them well, I'm going to have the unbelievable opportunity to help somebody through life.
Yeah, that's great, Aaron. Well, thank you. And our listeners, obviously, we told you were in for a real special edition here with Aaron Sadoff. And boy, it was everything of that and more. So thank you, Aaron, so much for joining us. For our listeners, where can they find you?
Oh, if you want, aaronsadoff.com. I do some stuff with International Thought Leaders Network and with Sean Aker and Orange Frog Training. Randy had referenced that. But you can see some of my information and some videos and some thoughts. I'm starting to do a little blogging. My first one, Everybody Needs a Wimby. I think it's pretty good. But so aaronsadoff.com, or just Google me. And here I am in North Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. But I want to throw it back at you, Randy. Thanks so much for being such a great friend, for being a great educational leader, and for taking the time to share your knowledge and bringing great people. Your podcast was fun to learn some of who your friends are. And I really look forward to seeing you, my friend, in person soon. And I wish to you and everybody that, safety and hope and happiness, my friend.
Yeah, that's great, Aaron. Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure having you on, my friend, and you did a great job. Just want to thank again CEE and Aaron Sadoff for this episode of the Three Ships podcast. If you have not got a chance to pick up a copy of the Three Ships, it's available at Amazon, BookBaby, and Barnes & Noble, and I'm glad to see it's in Aaron's hands. Also, we're finalizing registration for our self-care seminar, so we'd love to have you join us. Thank you for listening to the Three Ships podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share on your social media. You can rate, review, and make sure to subscribe to future episodes. And to learn more about RLR and how we can support today and tomorrow's leaders, check us out on our website. Again, a very special thank you to Aaron Sadoff. And as we wrap up this episode of the Three Ships podcast is a production of RLR Leadership Consulting.
I love you, Randy. Woo!
Love you too, buddy.